On paper, this car should have been forgotten. In the 1990s, Japan was building some of the greatest sports cars the world had ever seen. There were faster cars. There were more expensive cars. There were rarer, more exotic, more advanced machines. And this one was not the best of them. It wasn't the quickest. It wasn't the most beautiful. It wasn't the most sophisticated. By almost every number you could measure, there were better cars sitting right next to it in the showroom. And yet, 3 decades later, something strange has happened. Almost all of those better cars have faded into history, remembered only by enthusiasts. But this one became immortal. Today, its name is known by people who don't even like cars. Its value has exploded into the hundreds of thousands. It has starred in movies, in video games, in the dreams of an entire generation. It is, without question, one of the most legendary cars ever made. So how? How did a good, but not the greatest, Japanese sports car from the 90s become one of the most worshipped machines on the planet? This is the story of the Toyota Supra, and the answer to why it refused to die. To understand the Supra, you first have to understand Toyota, because Toyota, then and now, is the most sensible car company on earth. They built their empire on reliability, on cars that start every morning, run for decades, and never, ever let you down. Practical, dependable. Some would even say, boring. This is not a company you'd expect to build a legend. But in 1993, Toyota released the 4th generation of a car called the Supra, and it was serious. Long, muscular, purposeful. A proper grand tourer built to take on the best sports cars in the world. It was good, genuinely good. But if that were the whole story, you would not be watching this video. Because good is not what makes a car immortal. The thing that would turn this Toyota into a god was hidden under the bonnet. It was an engine. 3 liters, straight 6, twin turbo. Its name was the 2JZ. And to look at the numbers it made from the factory, you'd think it was nothing special. Respectable power, smooth, reliable of course because it was a Toyota. But Toyota had done something with this engine that they didn't have to do. Something that would change everything. They had built it, impossibly, unnecessarily, almost absurdly, strong. Here's what Toyota did. Most manufacturers build an engine to handle a little more than it needs to. It's cheaper, it's lighter, it makes sense. Toyota didn't do that. They built the block of the 2JZ out of cast iron, thick and heavy and overbuilt, capable of withstanding forces far, far beyond anything the factory car would ever ask of it. They engineered it with a massive margin of safety, an engine designed to take punishment that, by all logic, it would never actually receive. It was overkill, beautiful, glorious overkill. And then the tuning world found it. When people began to modify the Supra, they discovered something almost unbelievable. You could take this engine, leave the factory internals completely untouched, bolt on bigger turbos, and force it to make double its original power. And it would just take it. Then they pushed further, tripled the power, 700 horsepower, 800, 1,000, on the standard untouched factory engine block. Numbers that would have grenaded almost any other engine on Earth into 1,000 pieces. And the 2JZ just kept running, reliable, unbreakable, immortal. Word spread across the entire planet. If you wanted to build one of the fastest cars in the world, and you wanted it to actually survive, there was one engine everybody wanted, the 2JZ. It became the holy grail of tuning, a legend whispered in every garage on every forum, in every corner of car culture from Tokyo to Los Angeles to London. Think about how rare that is. Most cars are defined by the people who designed them. The Supra became defined by the people who pushed it, by an entire global community who found something the engineers had built in, almost by accident, and fell in love with it. People weren't just buying a Supra anymore. They were buying the greatest engine the tuning world had ever known. A blank canvas that could handle any dream you threw at it. And a car with an immortal heart is very, very hard to kill. But a great engine alone does not make a car immortal. Plenty of brilliant engines are forgotten. What happened next to the Supra was something that no engineer could have planned and no marketing team could have bought. The Supra arrived at the exact moment the world was ready to fall in love with it. It was the dawn of a new car culture. Video games were putting the Supra in the hands of millions of kids who would never afford one. Tuning was exploding from a niche hobby into a global movement. And then came the movies. When the Supra appeared on the big screen, bright, loud, and impossibly cool, it stopped being a car. It became a symbol, an icon of a whole generation's idea of freedom, speed, and rebellion. For millions of people around the world, that orange Supra was the first car they ever truly fell in love with. The poster on the wall, the dream in the bedroom, the reason a kid first cared about cars at all. And something remarkable happened. The Supra transcended the car world completely. People who knew nothing about horsepower, who couldn't tell a Toyota from a Ferrari, knew the Supra. It crossed over into music, into fashion, into the very fabric of pop culture. Ask yourself how many cars can actually do that. How many machines escape the garage and become part of the culture itself, recognized by people who have never once cared about cars? You could count them on one hand, and the Supra is one of them. It was no longer just a fast Toyota. It had become one of the most famous cars in the entire world, and a car that a whole generation grew up dreaming about does not simply disappear. And yet, for a while, it looked like it might, because as the 90s ended, the world changed. Tightening regulations, rising costs, and shifting tastes began to squeeze these wild Japanese sports cars out of existence, one by one. And in 2002, quietly, Toyota stopped building the Supra. The legend went silent. For a few years, it seemed like the world had moved on. The Supra became just another used car, a fast, aging Toyota from a decade that was slipping into the past. But then, something began to happen, something that no one expected. The generation that had grown up with posters of the Supra on their walls grew up, and now they had money. And they all wanted the one car they had dreamed about as kids. Suddenly, the world realized that they weren't making these anymore. That every year, a few more were crashed, or worn out, or lost forever. That the clean, original ones were becoming precious. And the prices began to climb. A car that had cost a normal amount of money in the 90s started selling for tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The dream from the bedroom wall had become one of the most valuable Japanese cars on Earth. So let's go back to the question we started with. Why this car? Why did the Supra become immortal when faster, better, more expensive cars from the very same era have been forgotten? The answer is the most important thing this channel has ever tried to say. Because immortality was never about being the best. The Supra teaches us something that a spec sheet can never capture. That a car is not remembered for its numbers. It is remembered for how it made people feel. The Supra had an engine that refused to die. And so, it earned the loyalty of everyone who ever wanted to build something incredible. It arrived at the perfect moment. And so, it captured the dreams of an entire generation. It became a symbol of freedom and speed and possibility. At exactly the moment the world needed one. It was never just metal and rubber and an engine. It was a feeling. The feeling of being young and free and believing that anything was possible. And you cannot kill a feeling like that. You cannot let it rust. You cannot forget it. Engines can be rebuilt. Paint can fade. Numbers can be beaten by the next, faster thing that comes along. But a dream doesn't play by those rules. A dream only grows stronger with time, polished by memory into something even brighter than it ever really was. No matter how many years go by, that feeling stays alive in everyone who ever felt it. That is why the Supra refused to die. Not because of its engine, not because of its power, but because it became a dream. And dreams are the only things that truly last forever. So let me ask you, what was the car on your bedroom wall? The one that made you fall in love with all of this in the first place? Maybe it was the Supra. Maybe it was something else entirely. Whatever it was, tell me in the comments. I read every single one, because those dreams are what this whole channel is made of. That's what we do here. We don't just talk about machines, we talk about the dreams they became and the reasons they'll never be forgotten. If this car meant something to you, you already know what to do. Stick around. I'll see you on the next one.